What's up, fellas? Hey, Mr. T, what's going on? I'm just testing out this live chat. Oh, just you know, whatever the subscribers want to ask me, because like I said on Pascal's show, my show used to do football videos, so I never gave a reason why I went to politics. So if they want to ask me why I went to politics, then I'll tell them. Or if you want to ask anything or talk about anything, we could do that as well. Can you hear me okay? Okay, there might be a delay. So if you hear, I'm gonna count to, I'm gonna say one, and the next time I say one, just type one in the chat so I can see how much of a delay it is. One. Okay, so I see the delay. It's about a 5 second delay. In fact, no. Let me look it up real quick. I might have heard of it. Let's see. And oh yeah, the No Fucking Around Coalition, right? Yeah, I heard of those guys. I mean, you know, they got a they got a large mountain to climb. Wasn't Breonna Taylor killed in Dallas? Or was Louisville? Okay. Well, I mean, hopefully they'll get some justice for her. Seems like they're kind of dragging their feet in Louisville, up there in Kentucky, Mitch McConnell's district, I guess. Yeah, I heard that there was some shots fired. I'm not too familiar with the three percenters. Let me look them up. What's up, Santa Fe? So let me get this straight. Three members of the NFAC were shot in an accidental discharge. That's crazy. Okay, so their ideology. Uh, I want to go to their website. Let's see. I tell you exactly what they're about when I go to their website. Oh, are they saying that there are riots now? We stand. Yeah, they think American people are idiots. So the three percenters, they say we stand for freedom, liberty, and the Constitution. We will combat all those who are corrupt. We are America's insurance policy. We will not see our republic fall. We are everywhere. We are the 3%. Sounds like they're Republicans, hardcore Republicans. People call them the far right, but I don't see how they're far right. They're just Republicans. I mean, in the true sense of the word, almost verbatim. So I don't see how they'd have a problem with the no not fucking around crew or coalition or whatever, because they just want justice. But oh, okay, well, I mean, still though, there were a lot of people in that group that Charlottesville Unite the Right. There were some students there. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make sense if you're for the Constitution. Honestly, the Constitution was a perfect. It the Constitution is a perfect document. It is. The problem came when the United States started bringing in states like when the United States started expanding. When they, for instance, in the Louisiana Purchase, part of Texas was brought into the United States. You know that Louisiana already had slavery through the French. So when they brought in Texas, which had slavery from Mexico, those people didn't want to give up their. They wanted to. They tried to um, be annexed into the United States, but the United States was like, "Yo, y'all a slave. Y'all a, y'all are a slave country," because it was the Republic of Texas after Texas won its independence from Mexico. They still wanted to hold on to slavery, and there was a lot of people in Texas that, because Mexico had abolished slavery by the time Texas had won its maybe maybe 6 or so years, but Texas was like, we don't want to give up slavery, and so that's when you had Sam Houston. Me too. I used to, when I was single. But that's when Texas came in and the United States was like, nah, y'all got slaves, you know. And the only reason that Texas was allowed in to the United States is because President Polk was a Democrat, and he allowed Texas to join the Union. And so that's the only reason that Texas got into the United States. And so, you know, uh, how that goes back to the Constitution is the Constitution initially, 2 years after the American Revolution, you know, Thomas Jefferson was trying to eradicate slavery. He was trying to first cut off the slave trade. Mexico ended its slavery um, roughly 20 years after it won its independence. But the reason why Mexico could end its slavery so quickly is because you got to remember that you're talking about Spain and the Kingdom of Spain. So the they had like um, the Catholic Church involved, and the Catholic Church was already against slavery. So when Mexico got its independence, you had cardinals that were in Mexico, and they were like, "Yo, y'all need to get rid of this slavery." And everybody's a Catholic, so of course they get rid of slavery because the cardinals like, "Yo, who was the new president?" They got rid of it without a problem. But in the United States, you didn't have a religious figurehead like that. So you're talking about bringing a state like Texas or Louisiana from other countries that had instituted slavery, and you're you're talking about pretty much a country that's pretty much slave free. And so you're like, okay, well, we'll bring you guys in on the Texas. Texas was getting they were getting invaded by Mexico. Texas didn't have any allies, and so in order to help Texas, Polk, he let a man. Like I said, he was a Democrat, so he didn't care about slavery. Uh, Probably wanted it and wanted to increase the union as well. So he brought him in. He didn't care. So that's why slavery was so hard to get rid of, and we had to ultimately fight a civil war because if you notice, all the southern states wasn't the states that fought in the Revolutionary War. So these states were brought in from other countries, colonizations, and they didn't have any concept really of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, all men created equal, and so on and so forth. So it took roughly 79 years, I guess, um, to get all of that ratified and end slavery. But a lot of people don't know that. So, they put all the blame on white people, but there were black people that owned slaves. Matter of fact, in Mexico, it was a thing for black women, especially, to own slaves. So, and they had, a rumor is that they had a lot of the slaves were sex slaves after their husbands died. So, a lot of places. Matter of fact, Mexico, next to Brazil, was the largest importer in slaves from Africa. A lot of people think it was North America, but it was actually Mexico or Spain. But yeah, I'm looking at this three percenters. Um, well, the amendments, like amendments. Okay, so let's see. You mentioned the Constitution, perfect document, but it has its flaws. Amendments has purpose. The Constitution considering African descendants three-fifths of a human was their rationalization for slavery. No, that wasn't it. Um, I mean, I disagree. This is what I've read. I'm not going to, try to come down as a, crass or know-it-all. But this is what I read. If you can hear me out, Mr. T12. The three-fifths clause in the Constitution was to limit the power of the southern states. So, like you had the electoral college, and the states get the electoral college. I don't want to. I guess to make it easier or simpler, you can say points, right? So, in electoral college, like Texas now gets 38 electoral votes. So to limit these slave holding states, because remember, you're coming into a predominantly free society, and you bring in these slave holding states from other countries. And so they say, well, if you're going to count the population, then you got to count our slaves too. And if you count the slaves too, then guess what? The population is bigger, so you get more electoral votes, which gives you more electoral power. So when you run for president, so they said no, these slaves are, as far as the electoral votes are concerned, or the population is concerned, going towards electoral votes, these slaves are three-fifths of vote, or three-fifths of the population. Yeah. So essentially, if that wouldn't have had happened, then what you would have had is a lot more Democrats, presidents, and you probably wouldn't have. We probably wouldn't have had slavery end without a world war instead of a civil war. Because if you look at uh, throughout history, it was always Democrats. Republicans, they went on the Constitution. So all men are created equal, right? Under the Declaration of under the Bill of Rights. Uh, that lets you know that there was a conflict of interest. You can't go around saying all men are created equal when history alone tells you that black people and Indians and Native Americans, for that matter, Hispanics, Asians, they're all men. You know, so to say all men are created equal and then say, well, nah, but all white men, it doesn't fly. Other than prisoners in the 13th, what do you mean prisoners in the 13th? So by the Constitution, the slaves were American citizens by rights, if I understand right. Well, the parties were different. You had the Whig Party and the Federalists. That's true. You did have the Whig Party. The Whig Party was for slavery. The I mean, you're getting into uh, democracy versus republic now, which is that's what it essentially was all about anyway. The Whigs, they wanted to keep slavery. Tanavane, what were you saying about the prisoners in the 13th? I didn't understand what you're saying. No, the 13th Amendment was basically the Emancipation Proclamation. The 14th Amendment was birthright citizenship, which was exclusive for freed slaves. So basically, if you were a slave uh, and you had children, they were citizens under the 14th Amendment. The 15th Amendment allowed black men to vote. So I don't understand the 13th Amendment as it's stated promotes the legalization. I mean, I got a constitution right here. Ladies, I got a constitution right here. So let's see. I'm still in the articles. Amendment 13. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for a crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Yeah, because I mean, when you get convicted in some states, uh, I know in the federal penitentiary, if you get life, you still have to work, but you don't work. You don't work for free, but you have to work. You get paid. Everybody in the federal penitentiary gets paid. So prisoners, if if you are going to get the death penalty, and then you say, hey, look, I'll take this plea deal not to get death penalty. Okay, well, what are you going to do? Just sit on your ass all day, every day? No, you're going to work, and it's not hard. It's not hard labor like sometimes it is, but of course you get paid more. So, I mean, I'm glad that they made that distinction. You know what I mean? Because otherwise, what would you do with people? You know, if I mean that's then what would you do with people? Honestly, if they got arrested for murder, rape, uh, treason, whatever, and you put them in a federal penitentiary, I mean, what do you do with them? They don't work. The taxpayer just has to foot that bill. So you can't call that slavery. You know what I mean? Like slavery, like you don't have a choice, right? Okay. Prisoners, especially felons, lose the right to vote and exercise their normal rights. That's not true. I mean, they can't vote while they're in prison in some states. I don't know if it's every state. I know in Texas, prisoners can't vote until they're done with their what's it called, uh, uh, prison sentences. And like if let's say that they get 10 years of prison and they get out in 5, and they have 5 years of parole, they can't vote until that entire 10-year sentence is up, so they can get their parole um, uh, ended early. So instead of 10 years, let's say if they good behavior and got a job and contributing to society, and the judge decides that, hey, look, we'll end your parole because your parole officer came to us and told us how well you were doing, and you've been real. He feels like you've been fully rehabilitated. Then we can end your parole early. So now instead of 5 years on parole, then you can do, you've done 2, and that's satisfactory. So we end your parole. Now you can go vote. But until you finish your sentence, you can't vote because parole is part of your sentence. You just got out early because of good behavior. But that don't. But in Texas, you can vote after you completed your debt to society. You can also own firearms. And I know in Florida, uh, after you've completed your debt to society, you can own firearms. In Texas, you can just own it in your home if you're a convicted felon. Let me see. Prison and special felons lose the right to vote. It says penal labor just meant the Constitution doesn't mean slavery before the 13th Amendment, right? So by what the Constitution said the rules and rights apply to even slaves, or really the Constitution. See, these amendments, if it wasn't for the Democratic Party, um, if it wasn't for their laws that they instituted while during their presidencies and Supreme Court justice appointments and um, all that, then there wouldn't have been a need for the 13th, 14th, and 15th amendments, because these rights would have already been they were already instilled by the Constitution. Well, Trump just came out with the second. He came out with the First Step Act, and his Second Step Act was supposed to include not discriminating against people who have prior convictions. I think he's trying to make that illegal, to have to check a box for felony and so on and so forth. And if it's not that, then he makes it illegal for people to discriminate against felons for having a criminal background. So that's in the Second Step Act. So that's why he had the First Step Act, and he's trying to do the Second Step Act. Democrats are blocking that bill, obviously, with all their shenanigans. Um, to try to get a job, you're denied. So why there are special programs to get former convicts employment, use the skilled labor jobs. Okay, that makes sense. They can't vote in Pennsylvania either. They can, they maybe can't, but I know that they can vote in Texas. And also, I think, probably after that election, if we can get the Second Chance Act passed through the Trump administration, then that might be to a universal thing to say, hey, look, y'all can vote. These people can vote and not be disenfranchised throughout the United States. But like I said, the Democrats, they're not passing any of these reform bills uh, that the Republicans have been coming up with. They've been the gatekeepers. To me, personally, yeah, I heard about Austin. I mean, that's sad. The guy, um, especially for the guy's fiance. He's pushing his fiance in a wheelchair, and he walks up to the car. I mean, that's first of all. I mean, I know that they wanted to protest. Well, in Austin, there was a couple. One of the guys, from what I read, from what I hear, had an AK-47, and he was walking down the street, open carry, and which is legal in Texas. And he was pushing his wife, or well, his fiance, in a wheelchair, and a car was driving through, and he was honking his horn, and the guy with the AK supposedly walked up to his car. Supposedly, some words were said and shots fired, and it was like 8 shots that you could hear fired. And the first sounded like they were louder, like a rifle. The first 5 shots, and then the last 3 shots sounded like a pistol. So what happened was the guy that had the AK-47 got killed, and the driver later turned himself in to the police and is cooperating with the police. So he said that I guess he said that he felt threatened, but it was a white guy that got killed at a Black Lives Matter protest in Austin, and his fiance was in a wheelchair, and she's black. So some people saying that the guy with the AK-47 was nice and he was cool guy, and then other people are like, nah, he was causing ruckus and looking for trouble, which I find it hard to believe when you got your fiance in a wheelchair, you know. So there's supposedly a video out of him being belligerent with people and looking for trouble. So we just gotta wait and see. To really, I'm gonna wait and see before I make my opinion on it. Yeah, it's hard to tell, but whatever it was, but it was 8 shots fired. Whoever it was, it was a gunfight for a quick little second. Hey, you want to see my dog? Let me tell my wife to send my dog out.
Yes.
Hey, can you open the door and send Cree out?
Can I do it?
Open the door and send Cree out.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye. But Mr. Tweet T12, tell me something. Do you believe? Say hi. This is Creed. He's a Shih Tzu. His hair is not up. It's usually in a little braid. We keep it long so it can be braided. Thank you, guys. Thank you. So back to the question I was going to ask you, Mr. T12. So the Democrat Party has been around for, let's see, The Democratic Party's been around for roughly 130 years. Might be longer. I just have to look at the dates. But they've been around longer than the Republican Party. And ever since its inception, because they were around when Thomas Jefferson, so 17, because they were called the Democratic Republicans. Then they split. So ever since their inception, the Democrat Party has fought to keep slavery and enacted the black codes, the Ku Klux Klan, Woodrow Wilson, and um, you know, he was a Democratic president that showed the birth of a nation in the White House, despite, you know, protests. So you had the Jim Crow laws in the South after Reconstruction, and the 1957 Civil Rights Act that was filibustered by which Lyndon B. Johnson was the I think he was the minority leader or the majority leader. Either way, he was the leader of the Democrat Party. And when it became so unpopular, Lyndon B. Johnson decided that, hey, look, I'm going to sacrifice the racist votes. Yeah. What about Board of versus Brown? What about Brown versus Board of Education? Because Brown won that one. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is, up until 1964, the Democrats had enacted all these laws to keep slavery, succeed from the Union, and racist. Oh, okay. Now, in 1964, all they did was sign the Civil Rights Act, which essentially ended their racist policies. Does that make them the good guys now? Because that's all I want to know. You don't, you know, if you had a party that kept their knee on your neck for nearly 200 years, and then, you know, in 1964, 1965, which more Republicans supported than Democrats, there was more Democrat resistance than Republican resistance on all three of those bills, the 64, the 65, and the 68 Civil Rights Act, or the Voting Rights Act. So through all that, the Democrats are crowned the champions of social justice in a 3-year span versus like a nearly 200-year span. To me, as a African American, well, I hate the term African American. To me, as a black man, someone that calls themselves a Democrat, especially a white person, calls himself a Democrat, to me is no different than a Nazi, a person calling themselves a Nazi. So, because, you know, there is no way that you can undo Nazism. You know, no matter what you do to Jews, you can build synagogues, you can be like, hey, look, you know, the Jewish people, but you can't call yourself a Nazi. I mean, to me, that's more racist than the Confederate flag, fucking Robert E. Lee statues. No, I don't believe that it's. I don't believe that it occurred. No, I'm gonna tell you what happened with that, with the switch or so-called switch, because you can actually look in Wikipedia now. The colors for Democrat and Republican that came about in roughly like 1970, I think during the Jimmy Carter election, because Republican, whether you know it or not, used to be red, and I think Democrat used to be blue. I mean, Republican used to be blue, and Democrat used to be red, um, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe somebody had them for. But to make things easier for people to understand, uh, like you watch the election during CNN. I forget which channel it was, but they made the election where, okay, Republicans red, Democrats blue. Okay, so none of the parties had their particular colors that they represented. That just didn't happen until a news station did that, and everybody else followed suit. However, in Wikipedia, they're always going to have the Democrat blue and the Republican red, and if that's hard uh, to keep up with, then under the Republican name of the president, they'll say they have a blue line, and they say, or a red line, they'll say this, like say George Bush, under his name will be a red line, and it'll show on the map all the people who voted for Republican, and the Democrat, it'll show all the people who voted Democrat under the same color blue. Well, if you look at the elections from, say, 1865 all the way up until 2016, well, not 2016, but 1976, Texas was a swing state. Like, Texas voted for Democrat president as well as Republican presidents, all through Abraham Lincoln, all the way up until 1976. But after 1976, Jimmy Carter's presidency, uh, the energy crisis, his presidency was so bad his first term that it turned Republican, it turned Texas red, and Texas haven't been uh, blue since. It haven't even been purple. So we're talking a good 12 years after 1964, after the Civil Rights Bill passed. So if that was the case, and um, Democrats, yeah, I know that. Wikipedia is going to, people in Wikipedia, people that edit Wikipedia are going to cherry pick the, what they think is relevant. Texas, of course, of course. I mean, hell, Beto O'Rourke outspent Ted Cruz. I think it was something ridiculous like 6-1. It's been a swing state. It was a swing state up until 1980, and then from 1980 and beyond, Texas was a Republican state. But before that, it was a swing state, depending on who was running. Nah, that's not true, man. I don't, I don't believe in those polls. Biden really doesn't have a chance. He's in a rock and a hard spot. You know, Biden is in a rock and a hard spot because he's already committed publicly that he was going to run. He was going to have a female running mate. Yeah, yeah. He you know, they had Trump, I think, at 3 or 4% nationally uh, before the debates against Hillary. I don't even think they had him getting 3% against Hillary. And we already saw what that happened. What happened with that? Because the thing about Trump is he already won. So those states that he won already, it's hard to see how they'll flip. Like it's always going to be the economy. Yeah, a lot of people disapprove of Black Lives Matter, but I don't think that they're going to flip an. I don't think that they're strong enough to flip an election. You know what I mean? I just think that Biden is just not strong enough. You know, and when the debates come, he gonna get eaten alive. First of all, he's older than Trump, and he doesn't have the energy that Trump has. You know, so he's just gonna get eaten alive. You know what I mean? Like, like out of all the presidents, okay, so I was born uh, during Nixon's, not Nixon, but Gerald Ford's presidency, and so you got. I don't remember Gerald Ford. I do remember Jimmy Carter's presidency. I remember Jimmy Carter's presidency, Ronald Reagan's presidency, uh, George Bush Sr.'s presidency, Bill Clinton's presidencies, and George Bush Jr.'s presidencies, and of course Obama's. And each one of those presidencies, all those presidents' opponents had less energy than the person who won. Like Al Gore, he was, they called him Al Gore, and he didn't have the energy that George Bush Jr. had. So, and he was popular. Everybody liked him because he kind of looked like Christopher Reeve, and he had just came out with a movie. Gore got robbed for Florida. I don't know. I mean, I saw a documentary on it, and I actually thought that too, because I voted for Al Gore. You know, but now knowing what I know about Democrats, um, from the black experience, from the white experience, it's a little bit different, but from the black experience, because white people, Hispanics, Asians, and other groups, they historically vote. Yeah, okay, well, that's fine. But I mean, it's done, man. It's history. I mean, it can't ever be undone. But Al Gore's dad was a segregationist. So fuck Al Gore, as far as I'm concerned. His dad was a certified racist. So as far as I'm concerned, oh well, like father, like son. I'm glad he didn't get in, you know. Yeah, the Bush family too. The Bush family, I mean, look how cozied up there with the Obamas now. Like, Bush was a dunce. He wasn't running the country out. Dick Cheney was. Then he had that fiasco ass war, weapons of mass destruction, which by him killing Saddam Hussein, because Saddam Hussein used to have, used to kill terrorists. You wouldn't have had ISIS. But by him killing Saddam Hussein, he destabilized the region. You had ISIS popped up. Then Barack Obama comes in, kills Gaddafi, destabilizes the region, which causes all these people to flee war-torn. They were already fleeing war-torn Iraq, so they went to forget where Gaddafi is from. Is just slipping my mind right now. They flee to that country, Libya, so they free Iraq, go to Libya. They kill Gaddafi, and now no, he wasn't. They killed Gaddafi. Gaddafi just wanted to sell his oil and hurt American oil sales. But they killed Gaddafi, and when they killed Gaddafi, they uncorked all of these refugees. Right? So all these refugees started flooding Africa, going into Europe, which and Sweden, which essentially in the next 20 years is going to completely change the landscape of Europe. Well, I didn't know that. That's good to hear. But yeah, by them killing Gaddafi, they messed up. They messed up the region. Then you had the Arab Spring in Syria, so you had all these Syrian refugees. So the Obama, Bush, the Clinton administration, um, the Lyndon B. Johnson's administration, Woodrow Wilson's, FDR, he's a Democrat. I kind of give him credit for Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security. So I kind of give him credit for that. And during his administration is when a lot of black people started voting Democrat because his wife, Eleanor Roosevelt, used to, she took a picture with some black people. And so black people really bought into Eleanor Roosevelt. They bought into, they bought into Eleanor Roosevelt. And then after that, then Truman, he desegregated the military. And so you had back-to-back Democrats that blacks kind of said, hey, look, this is good. Yeah, that's right. They killed Gaddafi for his oil and power. But these are Democrats that did that. If you look historically at Republicans, I'm talking about all the Republican presidents. They historically don't go to war. They historically are bringing troops back from war. I mean, hell, Nixon ended the war in Vietnam. Democrats started it. So, like I said, man, Democrats are on some other shit. This is the thing about anti-Semitism is Hebrew is a Semitic language, but so is Arabic. So you know, I don't see if you're reading from the Quran, which is exclusively Arabic, and it's in Arabic, I don't see how you could be anti-Semitic when when not all of the the Torah. What's that other book that Hebrews read from? It's not all in some of it is in Greek. Yeah, some of it is in Greek, some of it is in Hebrew. I haven't watched the Obama deception. All I know about Obama is that he's silver tongued. That's one thing the Democrats have down to a science is they have silver tongued politicians, and they can fucking woo you to sleep with how well they speak. Yeah. So I don't see how you could, label, especially, um, say an Arab. I don't see how an Arab can ever be labeled anti-Semite. I mean, Farrakhan, maybe, but if you got an Arab, that's, I don't see how they could ever be called anti-Semite. Obama messed up in Afghanistan. They kind of liked us when we got there, but he kept changing how to deal with the local people until none of them trusted us anymore. True. He kept on sending them drone strikes and killing those killing those kids and people's families and double tapping. Yeah. And it didn't in the end at the end of the day it didn't do any good. Look, if you watch interviews with Obama, like he doesn't show resolve on anything. He doesn't show clear resolve on anything. Like he's like, well, maybe the only thing that he showed clear, even like gay marriage, like he was on the fence for a long ass time uh, for gay marriage. But Mr. T12, I'm, I didn't answer your question. No, it literally made us more people hate us. I agree, Tanner Vane. But Mr. T12, I didn't answer your question about the Southern strategy fully. Okay, so as you know, there were Dixiecrats in the Democrat Party, and what I believe, what I believe is when uh, what's that guy's name? Barry Goldwater. I believe when Barry Goldwater ran for president, he his resolve against social justice issues and um, his resolve against social justice issues uh, just kind of awoken some of the Dixiecrats to where they were like, hey, look, he's the leader of the Republican Party, or he's at least a faction of the Republican Party that we can kind of slide to, because Nixon didn't like it. Um, and then when the Civil Rights Act came, and you're not talking about blacks voting, because black men already had the right to vote along with white men. They just didn't. They just had voter suppression in the South with these Jim Crow laws. So the resistance came with, especially in the Dixiecrats, was it wasn't just blacks' right to vote. They already had that. It was allowing women to vote, and it was allowing teenagers to vote, 18-year-olds. Because before that, I think you had to be 25 and older to vote, black or white men. So they allowed teenagers to vote. They allowed women to vote, and the Voting Rights Act also it enforced those rights. So they were going to send federal troops to enforce those rights throughout the southern states. But the Dixiecrats were small in number, because let's say you got Texas, or you say you have all the southern states, right? You got all the southern states. And let's say within those southern states, you got 100 million people that live in that southern states. Well, 50 million of those people gonna be fucking women. You know what I'm saying? So, half of those gonna be women. And then you're talking about people that's 18 now can vote, 18, 19, 20, all the way up until 25 can now vote. You're fighting against a tsunami of resistance now, because not only you're talking about just black people, but you're talking about you're talking about white people too, and you had KKK members that were killing whites as well. They were killing white Republicans. That was turning a lot of people in the South off, because they were killing white people too. They were like Antifa. And so what happened was you had these Dixiecrats that were a small minority. And when they decided that they would say, we're going to move forward with this Voting Rights Act that we voted against in 1957, we're going to, because the tide is turning, we're going to champion it now. And really, they didn't champion it, because LBJ he didn't have like the strength like Donald Trump. He has control of the Republican Party. Like whatever he wants, he's going to get. LBJ didn't have control of the Democrat Party, so he had to ask the Republicans for their overwhelming support of this bill, even though Republicans knew that it was going to hurt the Republican Party, because it was going to look like the Democrats pushed this legislation when they didn't. Because the legislation was actually introduced in 1957 by the Republican Party, through Eisenhower's regime. So that's what a lot of people don't realize, that they credit the Democrats for championing the Civil Rights Act, but all they did was allow it to go through and allow it to end the racist policies that the Democrats had already in place. So what happened, Lyndon Johnson said, well, we'll abandon that small faction of white segregationists and overt racists. We'll abandon them, because what we're getting in return is white women. We're getting in return white teenagers. We're getting in return black women, as well as black men and black teenagers. So you're getting in return for a few white people a large chunk, of the voting block. So those Dixiecrats, what they did was they ran over, after they pushed those legislations through. One Democrat turned Republican, one, and the entire Congress turned Republican. Because he turned Republican, most of the Dixiecrat voters, Dixiecrat voters turned Republican as well. So the party platforms never switch because a Republican is always going to be about the Constitution. They're going to be about all of this. They're going to be about all of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the Bill of Rights is the first 10 amendments, and the last 17 amendments are the what's it called? Okay, so you got the preamble and the Declaration of Independence. Then you have the what is it, the 7 or 8 articles, and then the first 10 amendments I know is the Bill of Rights. So Clarence Towns wrote a book called The Loneliness of the Black Republican. It paints a picture of how blacks felt during that era. I'm gonna have to look that up. The Lonely Republican. What did you say his name was? Clarence Towns. I'm seeing other people writing it, writing that book. Okay. Clarence Towns. Black Republicans, a new book on the transformation. PolitiFact. I'm not seeing a book on him. So look, here's PolitiFact, okay? And PolitiFact is full of shit. They're gonna say that they're on narratives. During the congressional hearing on hate crimes, conservative African American commentator Candace Owens said that the Republican Party never had a strategy of capitalizing on racism to lure voters. Later, Tanner Vane. Good seeing you, man. So, here we go. So, Owens said that black conservatives face criticism. Okay, so she said that the Republican Party never had a strategy of capitalizing on racism to lure voters. Owens said that black conservatives face criticism from the left because they have the audacity to think of ourselves for us, because we have the audacity to think for ourselves and become educated about our history and the myth of things like the Southern Switch and the Southern Strategy that never happened. The Southern Strategy refers to the efforts by the Republican Party to appeal to Southern white voters who were turned off by the Democratic Party advocating for civil rights. Historians Historians disputed her statement, including Cornell professor Lawrence Gickman. Uh, Cornell professor. Cornell is a liberal university. University of Arkansas. See, they cherry picking their professors, because I can pull up a professor right now that'll say that it didn't exist, that it didn't happen. So what you have to do is look at the you can look at the either the voting blocks during each election and see which state voted for whom, and see that most of the states before 1980, most of the states were swing states. That's just a fact. Like, there was just no really solidly blue, solidly red states. They were all pretty much swing states. And then when Jimmy Carter got in office, he was so terrible that states started to get dug in. So, and University of Arkansas professor Angie Maxwell, Princeton historian Kevin Cruz called Owens' statements utter nonsense. Owens is a outspoken. Owens is a spokesperson for the conservative nonprofit Turning Point USA and encourages black people to leave the Democratic Party, calling it Blexit. Owens did not respond to our emailed request for comment on Twitter. She said she was referring to the myth that Republicans and Democrats in Congress switched parties. Cruz challenged her explanation, saying Owens predictably points to a small number of congressmen who switched parties as proof that the larger literature on the racial realignment is a myth, even though that isn't actually something historians and political scientists emphasize in the work on this. The Republican Southern strategy has been documented for decades, including by Republicans who were part of it. The fact about the Southern strategy, for this fact check, we interviewed historians and reviewed news articles from several. So they're reviewing articles. You know what I mean? Like, all through this here, they're reviewing articles. And what I'm saying is, not articles. What I'm saying is use your mind, use your brain. Like, who appealed to get Southern white voters? Like, what were they saying? Put blacks back in chains. What were they saying? Keep blacks under Jim Crow laws. You know, what were they saying? Like, vote for us. And because you're talking about Eisenhower. Eisenhower was just the Republican president. So, I mean, who do you got? I mean, what are you talking about? You're talking about they tried to, they just won through a landslide, two-term president. They just won. So why the hell would they be saying, okay, well, we need more white voters? Like, this shit don't make no sense. It don't. It doesn't make no sense. And then on top of that, why in 1957 did they try to pass the Civil Rights Bill? Like, that's not appealing to Southern white voters. Like, it don't make no sense. And then it didn't work if they did try it. Because if you look at, you had President Kennedy. Texas voted for President Kennedy, right? 1964. 1964 presidential election. Oh no, it was 1960 for Kennedy. I'm gonna show you how ridiculous this is. So if the Southern strategy worked, right? If it was gonna work, then Texas would be, because Richard Nixon ran against John F. Kennedy in 1960. So that means that if that worked, Texas and Louisiana, especially, because these were the strongest slave-holding states, that should be red, right? They should have voted for Nixon, right? Overwhelmingly. But they didn't. They voted for John F. Kennedy in Texas in 1960. All right? This is before the Civil Rights Act, right? They voted for Nixon in 1960. I mean, not Nixon, but Kennedy in 1960. All right? So if we go to the 1956 U.S. presidential election, Texas voted for Eisenhower, and so did Louisiana. Okay? And Eisenhower won by a landslide, by all means of the word. 35 million votes to 26 million votes. Louisiana and Texas. Okay, so we go to the next. Now this is where they split. The Eisenhower won by pretty much a landslide this election too. 1952 election, Eisenhower won Texas. Texas was red, and Louisiana was blue. So which one of those states was racist? Right? Florida was red as well. Right? So when was this Southern strategy? Because it didn't work. Because if you look at Kennedy, Kennedy won Texas and Louisiana. Lyndon B. Johnson won Texas, and he's a Democrat. Right? So it's not working. None of them won. George Wallace won Louisiana. Nixon lost. Let's see who won this. Okay, Richard Nixon lost Texas, right? And in the 1968 election, Nixon lost Texas. But he won. He won the presidency, but he lost Texas. Now this is a Republican. Richard Nixon, this is a Republican. But he lost Texas. Texas voted Democrat. And he didn't win Louisiana either. Because an independent won Louisiana. So he didn't win Texas and he didn't win Louisiana. You know, he won California. So I guess California was racist, right? I guess California was racist. He won New Jersey, liberal New Jersey. So I guess New Jersey was racist, right? So then in the next election, 1976, now he wins Texas on his record. You know what I'm saying? This ain't got nothing to do with race. Matter of fact, he won all but three states. Nixon won all but three states the next election in a landslide victory because of his policies. You know what I'm saying? So Texas turned racist after Nixon. Let me read these comments. Malcolm X was nonpartisan. He didn't believe in white liberals. He said they could be part of the movement to help blacks, but he always grew cautious for any of them needing to be the head of black affairs. When hear the statement now, that's the state of Black America is because of the last 40 years of Democrat rule. Do you believe that? Let me read this again. Malcolm X was a nonpartisan. Was nonpartisan. He didn't believe in white liberals. He said that they could be part of the movement to help blacks, but he always grew cautious for them needing to be in the head of black affairs. When I hear the statement now, that's the state of Black America. That the state of Black America is because of the last 40 years, the Democratic rule. Do you believe that? I absolutely believe that. I absolutely believe that because anytime, I mean, the same shit that Malcolm X was talking about. Uh, this was this was literally 60 years ago. Bare minimum 50, 55. You know, bare minimum 55 years ago. It's the same state of affairs. You know, you can literally take Malcolm X um, and not call it Malcolm X, and the same thing would be relevant today when in terms of the Democrats. The same thing. Barack Obama got 95% of the black vote. Barack Obama didn't do nothing for black people. You know, um, Hillary Clinton got 88% of the black vote. Hell, Bill Clinton got, I think, 80, 88, 87% of the black vote. He didn't do nothing for black people but fucking lock them up. Jimmy Carter, uh, he was the other Democrat president before Bill Clinton. He didn't do nothing for black folks. Um, that that did change. I mean, you know. So then, who do you have to refer back to? You have to refer back all the way to uh, what's his name? Fucking LBJ. So you know, LBJ just undid the Democratic uh, racist policies. You know, he just ended the Democrat racist policies that had been hampering blacks for the last 100 or so years. So if you look at it, blacks hadn't had anything done in their favor other than other than you know, because probably both Bushes, Reagan, and Nixon were not much better for blacks either, maybe slightly. No, neither Bushes were better for blacks. Reagan certainly wasn't better for blacks because he started him and Bush Senior started the war on drugs. So no, they wasn't better for blacks, and Nixon was better for blacks because the civil rights integration um, and desegregation actually those bills came forth to desegregate, but Nixon was the one who actually enforced it. That's why Malcolm X was so pissed off because he was like, look, they gave you the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and they did you had the board. Yeah, they did. Broke up the nuclear family. And now there's this stuff about nuclear families being um, Western. So you mean to tell me that the Chinese people didn't have nuclear families way before Westerners drove up on the scene? You mean to tell me that Africans didn't have a nuclear family? You mean to tell me that Egyptians didn't have nuclear families? What about the people in the Bible? you know, The Bible was around before there were known white people, or the Bible is from the East. Wasn't Adam and Eve from the didn't they have a nuclear family? Adam, Eve, and Cain and Abel. Wasn't that a nuclear family? What about Noah? He had a nuclear family. What about Abraham? He had a nuclear family. Even when he was having sex with his slave, it still was a nuclear family. You know, so I don't. But this is just the left's tactic. To They want to say that they want to say that the United States started with the, I think it's the 1619 project, that the United States started not in 1776, but it started in 1619 when the first slave arrived in the United States from Africa. But if they want to play that game, then you can say, well, the first chattel slavery, where it's slavery for life, was because of a black slave wanting to own another. I mean, a black man wanting to own another black man for life. So that was the first. That's why you had lifelong slaves. So they don't want to say that. So they want to be revisionists. But you're right. Neither the Bushes, the Reagans, the Nixon, the Bushes, Reagan, and Nixon were not. Well, Nixon was. Nixon was better for blacks than all the Democrats were. But you got to keep in mind that blacks wasn't voting for for Republicans. They were voting for Democrats. So if you have a voting block, like, let's say you have 50% white people that vote for you and 50% white people vote for the Democrat if you're a Republican. You got 35% Hispanics that vote for the Republican and 65% Hispanics vote for the Democrat. And then you got something crazy like 86% vote for the Democrat and 2% vote for 4% vote for independent, and then 10% vote for Republican. I mean, you can't really force your will with a mere 10% and say, hey, look, ignore white people that voted 50%, ignore Hispanics that voted 35%, and take care of our 10% vote. Because, even though we voted overwhelmingly for your opponent, you need to do something for us. Like, that's political suicide. Especially if you only represent 13% of the population. You know what I'm saying? So, now actually, blacks started voting for Democrats in the 1920s. They started overwhelmingly voting Democrat in the 1920s. That's why the Southern strategy thing don't hold up, because they start, like I said, FDR's wife, Franklin D. Roosevelt, because you had Teddy Roosevelt, but you also had Theodore Roosevelt. You had Theodore Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt, he was a Republican, and you had Franklin D. Roosevelt, who was in office for 4 terms. Well, 3 terms. He died in his 4th term. But he's the only president that had more than 2 terms. And they had to write the 27th, I think it's 25th Amendment. So people couldn't run for more than 2 terms. And this is a Democrat wanting to be fucking king. He was king for life, basically. But blacks started overwhelmingly voting for Democrats during his reign as president. Because, like I said, his wife, Eleanor, took a picture with some black people. And, well, some black women. And so black people were like, and, whatever. Plus, he had all these social programs, minimum wage, etc., that blacks were kind of giddy about. Because, he's helping the common man. He's helping the working man. So stuff like unions and union rights, you're talking about black workers. So they started voting for Democrats during FDR's presidential term. And then that was like 1930, to like 1942, I think. Then you had President Truman, who was a Democrat after that, who we're getting into the World War II, and he needed blacks to be integrated into the military, and so he desegregated the military. So now you got blacks saying, yeah, these Democrats are for blacks. So by the time Kennedy rolled around, because Kennedy said, hey, look, we're gonna give y'all the civil rights during my administration. That's what he promised blacks. And so blacks, overwhelmingly voted for Kennedy, and they overwhelmingly voted for Nixon. But the black vote was roughly 50-50 before that. So you had roughly 50%. And it's kind of hard to tell because a lot of people don't track that data. I don't think the racial data was tracked before 1976. I don't think that there's any racial data of the voting blocks that were tracked before that. And if there is, I can't find it. I haven't been able to find it. Yeah, so 1976, 1976 presidential race is the first time I see the solid statistics about blacks voting Democrat. You had blacks voted 82% for Jimmy Carter in 1976, and they voted 16% for Gerald Ford. Hispanics voted 75% for Jimmy Carter and 24% for Gerald Ford. Whites voted 47 to 52%. And so this is why I think whites get their business taken care of a lot more than any other voting bloc. The Washington Post. I'm gonna have to check that out. What year was that? What year is it up to? When did blacks start voting Democratic? Let's see. It's from the Washington Post. Okay, 2017. When did black Americans start voting so heavily Democratic? Is that what you one you saw? By Philip Bump? Yeah, see what I'm saying? This is what I'm saying. It's like they were pretty much 50-50 in the 30s. They were pretty much 50-50. It was like, you know, yeah, in the 1930s, and then during the World War II, then you saw that they started going heavily right after World War. So they didn't get into to they started going. They up at 60. You know what I'm saying? 60 by the end of the war. They're at 55% by 1945. 1948, they're at 70% voting Democrat. Then they kind of go down around the 52, 56. I mean, in 60, they started to tick up. Then in 64, they shot up, boom, 80%, 82%, like, looks like 82, 83%. 68, boom, they shot up even more for Lyndon Johnson, right? Almost 100%. Then even more, looked like they got, let me see, 2008. Damn, Lyndon Johnson got more than fucking, so you're talking in the 90% now because he got more than Barack Obama did by this chart. So then you come back down to 68. After 68, right? After 68, going to 72, it was a big ass drop, right? Because they didn't get what they thought they was going to get. They got rights that was already given to them by the Constitution. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment was already given to black folks, I mean, other than women and teenagers. But, they had already gotten it. They didn't get anything tangible because you know that affirmative action came through with Nixon. Nixon brought in affirmative action and enforcement behind it, right? He also brought in the enforcement behind desegregation. You know, Lyndon B. Johnson didn't do that shit. So there was a fallout. Blacks kind of said, damn, you know, you kind of fucked us. And you can see the same thing. You can kind of see the same. Well, I thought you could kind of see the same thing that happened from '08 to '12. But check it out. Like, you're looking at the black vote, 72. They voted for president in 76. They voted for president. Check that out. See what I'm saying? Blacks voted for President Carter, 1972. It ticked up. In 19, no, that wasn't Carter. That was what's his name election, Gerald Ford. So it kind of ticked up. Gerald Ford was a Republican. Then comes Carter. Carter comes in. It goes down a little bit. And then by 1980, it really goes down. Then Ronald Reagan comes into office. It kicks up. And then his next election in 1988, it kicks up again. George Bush Sr. comes into office. Well, now that was in 88. So George Sr. comes into office in 88. It kicks up again to 92. Bill Clinton. I guess that kicks up again in 92 for Bill Clinton. A little higher. After 92, guess what happened? It fucking goes down because Clinton didn't do shit. To 92 to 96, Clinton didn't do nothing. Came out with that crimes bill. 96 to 2000, George Bush, it kicks back up. You see what I'm saying? Then George Bush was such a turd that by '04, I mean, it just dropped. Boom. '04 to '08, it was all right. You know, it ticked up a little bit. And then '08 came in 12. So I don't know. I don't know if I trust this. You know what I'm saying? It's like, because by this it's saying that in 2008, because 2008 was supposed to be a historic turnout for voters. So it's saying in 2008, Barack Obama, now this can't be right. Because it's saying in 2008, basically, because we got 2008, 2012. It's saying that Barack, they voted less than 80% Democrat in 2000. Nah, man, Barack Obama had fucking 95, some people say up to 96 percent black vote. Okay, wait a minute. Black Party identifications. Black Party identification. So this is party identification. Black presidential vote. Okay, so I was looking at the wrong fucking study. Okay. So 36. We're just chatting it up about politics. Are you a subscriber? Are you one of the subscribers that used to watch the Cowboys videos Forever Spring? Oh yeah, we're just talking about politics. Blacks, black people in the Democratic Party, white people in the Democratic Party, the Republican Party. Political points of view, historic things. This is really like a test. letting some of my subscribers kind of see my face. Oh, you live in Minneapolis, Minnesota. How is it going in Minneapolis? Oh, okay. It's okay. You still there, Mr. T? Oh, okay. Well, I respect your opinion, Forever Spring. As far as what? Forever Spring. Yeah, I kind of get that, but I'm not understanding what you're asking exactly. Like, how do I feel about what Trump is doing as far as what? So, Mr. T12, do you believe, looking at the data and the facts, do you believe in the Southern strategy? Do you believe that the Republicans had a Southern strategy? Trump sending Trump sending unmarked police into cities who don't want them, violating their First Amendment rights. Hmm. You know what? I don't know if you're serious, Forever Spring, but if you honestly believe that sending unmarked police into a city is violating someone's First Amendment rights, and I actually have a Constitution with the Bill of Rights in it, and the First Amendment right, the First Amendment, Congress shall make no law respecting any establishment of a religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of the people to peacefully assemble and not to petition the government for redress or grievances. if you feel like them attacking a courthouse and tearing down the gate and breaking into the courthouse twice, they have the right to do that. That's not peaceful. So no, I don't. You know, if you believe that, and the police, I haven't seen any video of police not having unmarked police. Now they were in an unmarked police van, but the law that they're acting under allows them to do that. They're allowed to protect federal property and uh, investigate off of federal property. You know, so yeah. Well, what you're talking about, what you're talking about, and brutalizing. I didn't see any brutalizing by the feds. I didn't see anybody get arrested. I got somebody got. I found someone get detained. Federal police in a local jurisdiction. If you try to break into a federal courthouse, it's federal. You know what I mean? Like they can protect federal property. You sure that was the feds? I mean, if he's violating the law, then they should be able to impeach him. I mean, outright. If he's violated federal law, then they should be able to impeach him like immediately. They should be drawing up articles of impeachment, and the Democrats have shown they have no problems, no qualms of drawing up uh, articles of impeachment. So if that's the case, if that's true, then Democrats should be drawing up articles of impeachment if Trump is breaking federal law to that degree. If he's abusing his powers, if he can get a constitution, I mean, if he can get impeached over a phone call, then I'm pretty sure that if he breaks federal law on American citizens, they should be drawing up a constitution. Oh, okay. And what are you guys? Where are you guys' news sources? Yeah, well, I mean, the Constitution. I mean, I don't get my news sources from the mainstream media either. Critical thinking. I get my news sources from news press briefings, and I get my news sources from understanding the laws and the Constitution and understanding the laws that they're going in on. They've cited the laws that they're going in to the states on. Yeah, press briefings. So the there are press briefings every day. Yeah, most younger people. It seems like it gets worse every generation. I mean, I don't feel one way or the other. I mean, I feel like it's just right to wear a mask during briefings or not. If the doctors are telling him, I mean, he's the most tested man in America. So if the doctors tell him, I think he takes a COVID test at least once every 2 days, several times a week. So if the doctors are telling him you don't have COVID, then I don't see, if you don't have COVID, I don't see why it would hurt you to uh, be without a mask in the press briefings. Plus, he's been taking prophylactics. So I don't see. I mean, that's like, you know, anybody that tests negative for COVID day after day after day, they don't need to wear a mask. We know he doesn't have the word. We know he doesn't have it. But for the everyday average person, you don't know what they have because they're not getting tested like the president is. Oh, okay. For the president, he said the other day it took 15 minutes when he takes his. When he takes his test, it takes him 15 minutes to get the results back. So tell me what's going on. INFJ personality. Tell me what's going on. Tell me what's going on. Because I mean, you throwing ad hominem attacks around, honestly, or ad hominem arguments. Yeah, but you're protecting others by not being there. So that's what's going on. Martial law, then Civil War 2.0. You know, in order to do that, you actually have to have consent with your military. Your military has to be on par. Nah, I don't know if it's red team versus blue team. You're talking about Republicans and Democrats, INFJ personality. You're right. I haven't read the revised Patriot Act of 2019, but I don't see what's funny about that. I don't, you know, uh, have you read have you read Charles Dickens' book, Mask and Masquerades? I can laugh at you because you haven't read that book, have you? So it's silly. It's utterly silly. How so? I mean, I don't know how else he could have did it since I caught up. You know, if you look on my channel, I mean, what people always say Trump caused the spread, but you know, they never can tell me what he should have done. They never tell me what he should have done, because from what I know is Michael Flynn, who was the national security advisor to the president, who talked to. Hold on, stop, because y'all throwing a lot of things at me at once. So let me, you know, attack them head on real quick. Oh, okay. So what about these people that have masks that are throwing these parties, these block parties and shit? What about them? So, you know, he told people not to wear masks, or you talking to grown folks that can make their own choices. So what is Trump? Is he a god or what? Did he tell people not to wear masks, or did he tell them that they have a choice? Are we living in America, or are we living in communist Russia, USSR? No, okay. So if you're not going to argue, because I'm not the type of person that's not going to have intelligent discussions. Now, if you just want to come in here and let off some steam, you can do that on another channel. Okay. So you have your mind. So you have your mind made up, right? Yeah. He didn't use the Defense Protection Act to get testing where we needed it. He won't take responsibility. He also giving people misinformation about masks and testing. I remember Dr. Fauci saying we didn't need masks all the way up until March. And this is after the first person died on February 29th. And he was like, well, you don't need masks. And so was the Surgeon General saying you don't need masks. So was he repeating what the people that he put in charge to take care of COVID, his task force, was he repeating what they said? Yeah, he did. Fauci did say that. Fuck you mean? He did say that. I'm gonna see if I can pull it up on my video. I'll give you a source. Just give me 1 second. In the meantime, one of you guys define what a Republican is and what they want and what a Democrat is and what Democrats want. I'm not talking about from the low level. I'm talking about from the top level. You know, because all political parties are you know they from the top down. They're like a pyramid. So the low level guys don't know shit. Well, that's funny, cause you know I was talking to a guy the other day and he said we didn't know about it. So here we go, Dr. Fauci. What day was this? USA Today. Dr. Fauci. Uh, I recorded it. Let me source something else for me, cause it was for me to post actually, cause I ran across some other guys that March 2020, March 2020, March 20. We got one right here. Here's the source. I'm gonna give it to you. Flashback March 2020. Um, 60 minutes overtime. There is no need to be walking around with a mask. Infectious disease expert Anthony Fauci told 60 Minutes on March 8th, 2020. I'm talking to whoever said that Trump was talking about no mask. We're talking about after 15 people are in the U.S. with COVID. One person died of COVID on the 29th of February. The first death that they said died. I don't give a shit about what he was worried about. If he said it or not, if he's a doctor and he says it, you know what I'm saying? If he says it, then Trump repeats it. Then guess what? You know, Trump is doing what people said he wasn't doing, following the advice of his of his uh, uh his staff. Read your read your comment, please. Read your comment, please. Okay, hold on a second. Let me go up because y'all been typing so fast. Red team versus blue team. You obviously haven't read the revised Patriot Act. We need more purple. Yes, red team. Trump shit. It's typical polarization via television. South Korea, United States, COVID-19 cases. South Korea and the United States had their first confirmed COVID case on the same day back in January. South Korea took the threat seriously and by the start of March had tested 100,000 people for the virus. Trump didn't take this seriously and tested only 1,000 people by the start of March. That's not true. That's not true at all. You see this here? See that? That's a timeline that I made after documenting the 2-hour timeline that's on my channel in video. That means that I had to look at hundreds of videos in succession and put them all together and upload them. So I know that that is false because, let's see, on January 28th, there were 5 confirmed cases in the U.S. testing in 26 states. So let me show you how this unfolded. And South Korea, if I'm not mistaken, is closer to China than actually the United States is. All right. So, because I can't talk about COVID and then switch to talk about the riots or the protests, whatever. So we're gonna stay on one thing, head on. All right. So December 1st, 2019, was the first archived case of COVID, and they were saying it was unknown SARS-like. All right. So that means because it's up to a 14-day just incubation period, that means that you're talking about November of 2019. Now, mind you, 10,000 people travel a day from China, from China's mainland to the United States. Every day, 10,000 people. So December 14th, it was first reported to Chinese authorities. They're like, look, no, it was first reported to Chinese authorities. Then December 31st, it was first reported to the World Health Organization under pneumonia. January 2nd, they were denying that it was SARS-like, and they shut up people, and they told them to stop spreading rumors. They disciplined. This is January 2nd. Now, you know, on January 3rd, Trump killed Soleimani. January 4th, the World Health Organization tweets about a cluster of pneumonia cases. January 6th, Alex Azar contacts Chinese health officials, which was actually the 5th because China is a day ahead of us. And he asked to give assistance and send U.S. authorities in there, or U.S. CDC in there, to help with this new cluster of ammonia cases. China said, no thanks, we don't need your help. All right. On the 8th, the CDC issued a health advisory for travelers to Wuhan, China, saying, hey, look, there's a health advisory. The 9th, the World Health Organization reports the SARS-like symptoms. The CDC begins questioning travelers from Wuhan about showing symptoms. So we already see that the World Health Organization tweets about it and lets the world know essentially about the virus. On the 5th of January, the Humans and Health Director, Alex Azar, contacts China the next day. China don't want to talk. So then you have, on the 10th, the genome sequence is shared and labeled as SARS-2, or the coronavirus. So it's shared with the rest of the world on January 10th. Now you're telling me that this virus has been circulating in China since the 1st of December, bare minimum. And you got 10,000 people coming in from China a day? It's probably already here. If it's not here, the World Health Organization said that because the first death in China was on the 11th, which was actually the 12th in the United States time. The 14th, the CDC says vaccines for the flu ain't working. So that could have been, but that's a whole nother subject, but that could have been COVID. Now on the 15th, China had that trade deal with the United States. They had that massive trade deal with the United States on the 15th. A couple of hours after that trade deal was signed, China said, oh, by the way, this virus is contagious. It could be transferred human to human. Because before, they said that it was coming off of animals. and that there was no evidence. Matter of fact, the World Health Organization said there was no evidence of human to human transmission. We're talking about on the 15th. So right after they signed that trade deal, they said, yo, by the way, it's contagious, human to human. And not only that, the same day that they said it was human to human, there was a traveler that traveled from Wuhan, China, to the United States, and already in the United States on the 15th. There was the first case reported on the 21st that got sick. They didn't know he was sick because you know why? Because China wasn't giving no information on symptoms. We didn't have a live subject here. Nobody knows how to screen for it. So on the 17th of January, the CDC is in airports screening everybody from China with those thermal, those one thermometers. You remember that? I guess you don't. Short memory. But you can't test the coronavirus like that. So it's not like they didn't do nothing. You didn't have any information to work on. Plus, the World Health Organization didn't label it a pandemic until when? March? Beginning of April? They didn't say it was a pandemic until the beginning of April. And you're talking about literally 2 weeks after the World Health Organization said that there was something going down in China. You got people getting screened from China. And China said that they had it under control this whole time. They said they had it under control. On the 17th, on the 20th, you had Hong Kong people on the Diamond Princess getting sick. Trump announced a travel ban, that he was going to do a travel ban on the 22nd of January. People started calling it a Muslim ban and a racist ban. It's like these racist bans, he's trying to put a racist ban on it. But this is the next day after the first case was confirmed in the United States. Trump said, shit, I'm going to put a travel ban on. The next day, they started calling him a racist and alarmist. On the 23rd, Wuhan got locked down. On the 24th, the United States started in negotiations to extract U.S. citizens from Wuhan. On the 27th, Alex Azar held his first press conference about the coronavirus. The 28th, there were 5 confirmed cases in the U.S., and they were tested in 26 different states. The 29th, the first plane arrived from Wuhan with 200 passengers. On the 30th, Russia, who is right next door to China, decided to close their borders. The World Health Organization came out and said it was a global health emergency of international concern on the 30th. The next morning, Trump announced his travel ban that they had been calling him a racist on. February 4th, his State of the Union, Joe Biden claimed he was fear-mongering when he addressed COVID. That's when Nancy Pelosi tore up his State of the Union speech. February 6th, let's see, I had it, but I didn't write it down. February 7th, the United States shipped 18 tons of PPE to China. 18 tons on February 2nd, 7th. You know why? That's right. On the 6th, Tedros had a press conference that said that China had the issue under control. Matter of fact, on February 10th, Tedros said that 99% of the cases in China, 99% of the cases were in China, and most of the cases were mild and showed no symptoms. That's February 10th, all right? Now, February 10th, the World Health Organization was also allowed in China with limited access. So you're talking December to January, that's a month. January to February, 2 months and 10 days. Now, if you push this back in November because of the incubation period, you're talking 3 months. This stuff has been in China, and the World Health Organization wouldn't allow it to go into China. The United States still never made it to China. But the World Health Organization didn't get to go to China until 2.5 months down there after they first was alerted about the virus. So if you're not even letting the World Health Organization into your country to investigate, we know that the United States wasn't getting great information on how to take care of this virus. You can't prepare for a virus that you don't have a live sample for. That's just a mystery virus. So, I mean, I did a timeline all the way up until I think April on my channel. So I know for a fact that half the shit that people say about Trump not taking care of business is bullshit, because I watched it in real time and addressed it in real time. Now, let me see some of this stuff you guys are talking, because I haven't been reading. Drawn up Kruger effect didn't use defense protection. Mass testing. No, I don't have any. I made up. Fauci never said that. He acts like a virus or something that's happening to him, not in the U.S. Sources P. Manual. But he said the Epoch Times. No, I don't read the Epoch Times. I hate they fucking commercials. And I don't really watch. The only time I watch partisan news is if I'm watching something the opposite of it. But if they're using a lot of conjecture and ad hominem arguments, then I typically tune out folks like that. So what I mean is, if you're not talking like half this stuff is pretty straightforward. The Epoch Times for long gone, trolling complete. Scientists change their stance when the new data is available. That's how science works. We know more about the virus now than we did back in January. That's true. I already explained that, as did Dr. Fauci, about his early stance on masks. Are you reading any comments? I don't. It doesn't matter that he said that back in March. Are you talking to me? Dr. Fauci did say that, but he said that because he was worried the American people would panic with all the PPE, and then there would be enough for doctors. I can understand him saying no need for masks, because he did say that. He said that there is no need for masks, and he didn't want the American people to take up all the masks from the doctors. Now, you do realize that there was not masks available because Trump sent majority of the masks to China on February 7th because China said that they had the situation under control and they just needed help. And so once China blew through our masks that we gave them, then China told 3M uh, that they wasn't going to send any more masks. They made 3M not be able to send their masks. And so United States, we don't produce masks. So all our masks was in fucking China. And we had to, we already gave them our masks, and now we need to order some masks, but we can only order them from China. So that caused that fiasco. Plus, there were no ventilators. No states had ventilators. Okay, so we had to produce the ventilators. What else? There was no medicine, and so if you look at the first person that was actually here from the coronavirus, they didn't die until a month, and they got here on the 15th of January. They didn't die until the 29th of February. So they didn't die until a month and a half later. So I can understand if Trump thought like, shit, man, if somebody does catch it, fuck, we got a month and a half to get our shit together. I wouldn't blame him. I can't blame him. But he put some people in charge. He put a whole task force in charge of managing all that shit. Trump's not a doctor. Trump ain't going out there and giving people tests. All he can do is say, hey, look, we don't have a task force because Michael Flynn talked to Susan Rice. She was supposed to, she had the meeting about the global health security program that the Obama administration had. She gave him the playbook, the pandemic playbook. What happened? The FBI tried to trick Michael Flynn into lying. Michael Flynn has to leave. So the next person up was John Bolton. John Bolton gets in there and he disbands Tim Zimmer and the Global Health Security. He disbanded them on the 8th of May in 2018. Well, John Bolton gets fired. And he tries to testify against Trump, right? Remember that? So you don't have nobody, you don't have an organization at the beginning of this shit because you're getting impeached. You got Iran firing missiles on U.S. bases. You got all this shit going on in 2019, at the end of 2019. So by the time this COVID comes, Trump has to say, well, where's our team at? Because they asked him about that. They said, you disbanded the team. He was like, what? I didn't disband no team. He said, maybe one of our people in our administration did, but I didn't do it. And that's just how government works. If you have a national security advisor, he can create or disband certain teams. If you say, hey, look, the government's too bloated, clean it up. He's not supposed to do every little, he's not going to micromanage, the president's not going to micromanage every little fucking program that's created or disbanded, that's not created by Congress. Now, if it's created by Congress, that's something different. He's got to know about it. But if it's some fucking little program that NSA creates or disbands, that it ain't got nothing to do with Trump. Because you remember, in February, I think it's February 25th, he had to go to Congress to fund his program. That his task force, he created a task force. He had to actually go to Congress and get Congress to fund that task force. And he would ask for $2.5 billion, I think, and they gave him $8.5. The blame of deaths of tens of thousands of Americans will be placed on Trump. There are elements that you have to, well, you know, they said that it was going to be 2.2 million deaths. So, what about the lives he saved? So, if it's 2.2 million deaths, I mean, he saved the amount of deaths at least 15 fold. So, what about that? What about the death? What about the death percentage? The survival rate being 99.97%. Is he going to get credit for that? Or you can blame that hundred and some thousand deaths on Trump. He can take that, but with that, you got to give him credit, don't you think? With the survival rate, well, you're going to only give him credit. I mean, if because to me, if a person's got a 99.7 survival rate, uh, then they should get credit. Now, when you're talking uh, uh, a survival rate of only 80, 70, 60, 50%, that's terrible. You shouldn't even be worried about a virus, anything short of 1% of the population dying. Honestly. Matter of fact, more babies are aborted every year in the black community than deaths of this COVID. All over. And the total deaths of COVID, more fucking babies are aborted every year. Nobody wants to talk about that. Blame the deaths of tens of thousands of Americans can be placed on Trump. There are elements that you have to prove in order to hold somebody accountable for involuntary manslaughter. One, one that person acted in gross negligence, in a gross negligent way, or failed to act, and that failure was product of gross negligence. Okay, I think Trump's conduct of lying to the American people and downplaying the risk, giving them information that they then use to make their everyday behavioral decisions. Now you can't, you never get that to fly in any court of law, boy. Mr. T. Let's see, Mr. T12, you still there? Michael Flynn. I don't know if you did. You hear the part where I was talking about Michael Flynn and John Bolton? Do I trust the media on both sides to be accurate? Um, to a degree, typically what I do is I might listen to something. I might hear a story on Fox News, right? Well, not on Fox News because typically I go to them last or second. So I might hear a story on MSN, NBC, or CNN. Um, Typically, I don't listen to watch CNN. ABC or NBC, CBS, right? So I'll listen to a story on them, and then I'll go to Fox and see if they have like the same story and hear uh, what their facts are without conjecture. You know what I mean? If I feel like there is something that's going to be in dispute, if I actually care about it, then I'll do my own research about it. So I'll give you an example. So uh, if ABC says, well, Trump is not listening to his advisors about the coronavirus, I'll say, okay. And then I'll go to Fox News, and Fox News will say, uh, Trump is listening to his advisors too much, or he's actually listening to his advisors. I don't see what the problem is. Blame the advisors, don't blame Trump. So then what I'll do, because there's a conflict, if 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 they don't show exactly what they're talking about in context, then what I'll do is I'll go to the press conferences, and I might watch 10 press conferences in a row and see what the advisors say and see what Trump says afterwards. And I'll make up my own decision. So if the advisors come out and say, look, there's nothing to worry about the virus, you should be more worried about the flu, and so on and so forth. And then Trump says, well, you should be worried about the flu. If Fauci says, well, typically the 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 flu, you can predict that in March the flu hospitalizations and cases go down like this in March and April, and we're trying to see if the virus is going to do that. And then Trump is in a rally, and he says, well, word is, there, I heard that the flu might go down in March or April. I don't know this for a fact, but this is what we're thinking. And he specifically says he don't know that for a fact, but this is what the general thinking is, because it should act like every other fucking flu. He shouldn't have to say that. It's like common sense. You know what I'm saying? So in that regard, I give the mainstream media on the left, or leftist mainstream media, a false narrative, and I just call him a lie, because he didn't say that. You know what I mean? So as far as the mainstream, I don't really like Fox News, because, in my opinion, Sean Hannity is, it's like he's in love with Donald Trump, and it's insufferable how much he, plays this. Yeah, like Sean Hannity, he exaggerates. He's like, oh, I'm a patriot, I'm this, I'm that. Oh, Mr. President, sir, we love you, and we know that doing the best you can, sir, and blah blah. Okay, see, you can't be partial. I mean, you're being partial. You can't be objective. We already know just by your interview and your tenacity when it comes to Trump issues, how deep you jump in. And it's not even that. Like, I can deal with him. I can deal with Hannity being tenacious when it comes to this disputing lies about Trump, right? I can deal with that. But when he talks to Trump and he interviews Trump, he actually fawns over Trump. That's what I can't stand, because you're fawning over this man. So it kind of makes you seem partial to him when it comes to being a journalist. You know what I mean? Tucker Carlson. Tucker's okay sometimes, but I just can't watch a bunch of Tucker, because sometimes he'll get into these. He'll get so deep ingrained into his sarcasm and facetiousness that he'll start to sound like a prick and start sounding tone deaf. You know what I mean? Like, what he says is absolutely right. Same thing with Judge Janine and the other blonde-headed woman. I can't think. Their voices just annoy me. Janine and the blonde-headed lady. Their voices just, that nasal sound. I can't stand that. So the only people on Fox News that I really kind of like are like the news anchors that just ask the questions and let people say what they got to say. And probably Lou Dobbs, and he got interviewed. Trump got interviewed by someone else. Forget this guy's name, but I really, I like him, but I kind of don't like him. Chris Wallace, because Chris Wallace, he tries to um, ask people, it doesn't matter who it is, he tries to he tries to talk to people like as a matter of factly, and sometimes he's actually, he's actually wrong. You know what I mean? Like sometimes he tries to expose people, but the shit that he be trying to expose them on is not newsworthy. If that makes sense. Like Trump said, I took this test. If you're the president, you have to take this test. Uh, uh, this cognitive test, and I did so good. I did great. People saw me and they said, "Damn, Mr. President, you scored pretty high. We haven't seen that in a while." Okay, so he bragged on his test. No problem. So Chris Wallace actually gets the test and be like, "Well, you said you did so good. This test ain't even really that hard." You know what I mean? You got this picture of a rhinoceros and blah blah. It's not really that hard. Is that really fucking newsworthy? You know what I'm saying? It's like me saying, I took the ASVAB test, which I did, uh, and I scored pretty high, which I did. And then, somebody says, well, we got the ASVAB test right here. It don't look that hard. Like, that means nothing. You know what I mean? What are you trying to say, that I'm not as smart as I think I am? Like, you're condescending at that point. So when you're talking about uh, news anchors and reporters that start becoming condescending and crass and tone deaf, then that's when I have a problem. And unfortunately, uh, all of the mainstream news has that. All of the mainstream news has that. So I like straight news. Just tell me facts. You know, like local news. Like local news typically don't put their opinions in national news. Like the local news, they might say that. They might say, "Hey, a young man went and he robbed a store today, and he was shot by the owner, and now he's in the hospital." And then you might see one of the news anchors says, "Well, you know, um, that's too bad. You can't just run up in people's stores like that." Yeah, I know that's right. Because you never know who will be packing a weapon. Okay, that's local news. They'll comment on stuff like that. But national news, typically they just tell you straight, like A, B, C, and D, and we ain't got no opinion on it whatsoever. So that's the difference. Um, what else you got, Mister T12? And don't stay up too late because you know you got Pascal's show to jump on tomorrow. You know, you're welcome to ask me some subject, man. It's my first live stream, so I'm just kind of, yeah, man. Absolutely, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the trip down memory lane and the history lessons, and us talking history. I learned a couple. I learned a few things from you today. I wasn't expecting. You know, I learned a few things from you today, so I appreciate that. And I hope that you learned, uh, my where I'm coming from, perspectively, as far as as far as my political views. But most definitely, man. I hope to see you tomorrow on Pascal's show. Okay, thanks for stopping by, man. Thanks for stopping by. I'll see you tomorrow too, bro. Take care. I'm gonna end this live stream. Have a good one.